Winter had always been my favorite time of the year. There was something magical about it. The crisp air, the glow of holiday lights, and most importantly, the tradition I held dear. Every December, I built a snowman in my front yard. But not just any snowman. My creations were masterpieces. One year, it was a life-size snow wizard, complete with an ice staff. Another time, it was a perfect replica of a knight in icy armor. Neighbors loved it. Kids from the community stopped by to take pictures. And for a brief time every year, our little suburb felt like a true community. But this year would be different. Because this year, Karen happened. If you've never met a true HOA Karen, let me introduce you. Karen was the kind of person who lived to make others miserable. She thrived on drama, fed off control, and worst of all, she believed she ruled over the neighborhood. Technically, we didn't have an HOA. Years ago, our community voted against forming one. But Karen, she didn't care. She took it upon herself to run a fake HOA, sending out bogus violation letters, collecting dues from unsuspecting new homeowners, and issuing arbitrary fines to anyone who didn't meet her absurd standards. And now, apparently, my snowman had made it onto her hit list. I woke up one morning, stepped outside with my coffee, and nearly dropped the mug. My beautiful snowman destroyed, not melted, not toppled by the wind, stomped into oblivion. Chunks of snow and ice were scattered across my lawn like a crime scene. The arms were ripped off, the head decapitated, the entire body reduced to an unrecognizable mess. At first, I thought maybe it was some rowdy kids playing a late-night prank. But then I checked my security cameras. There she was, Karen, caught in the act, waddling onto my lawn at 11:47 p.m. in her robe and slippers, kicking the snowman's head off like a penalty shot. But she wasn't done. She tore the arms away, stomped the body flat, and then, like some kind of deranged villain, pulled a hairdryer from her pocket and started melting what was left. I watched in disbelief, my shock quickly turning into rage. But the final nail in the coffin? A printed letter taped to my front door. Dear homeowner, as per the new HOA regulations, all unauthorized yard decorations must be removed within 24 hours. Failure to comply may result in fines. Signed, Karen, HOA President. I clenched my jaw so hard I thought my teeth might crack. We didn't have an HOA. This was personal. And Karen had just declared war. Most sane people would have let it go. Maybe they'd laugh it off, rebuild the snowman, or ignore Karen's nonsense altogether. I wasn't most people. I rebuilt the snowman that same afternoon. Taller, stronger, and I pointed my security cameras directly at it. If Karen wanted a war, she was going to get one. That night, at almost the exact same time, she came back. This time, she brought a shovel. I watched in silent amusement as she hacked away at it, determined to erase any trace of its existence. She wasn't just knocking it over. She was digging it up like an archaeologist gone mad. And once again, another bogus HOA violation was taped to my door. She thought she had won, that I would give up, that she had control. She had no idea who she was dealing with. The next morning, my house looked like it had been plastered with eviction notices. Bright orange violation warnings were duct taped to my front door, my mailbox, even stapled to my fence. Violation warning. You are in breach of HOA regulations regarding unauthorized yard obstructions. Failure to comply will result in escalating fines and potential legal action. I ripped them down, my fury boiling over. It wasn't just about the snowman anymore. It was about power. Karen didn't just want me to remove my decoration. She wanted to scare me into submitting to her fake authority. She had gotten away with this scam for too long. It was time to take her down. I stood in front of Karen's house, gripping the fake violation notices in my hand. If Karen thought she could scare me into backing down, she was dead wrong. Her house was exactly what you'd expect from someone who ran a fake homeowners association. Signs were posted everywhere, rules about noise levels, parking restrictions, and mandatory lawn inspections. The woman was running her own personal dictatorship. I rang the doorbell, crossing my arms as I waited. The door flew open like she had been standing behind it the whole time. And there she was, Karen, in full Karen glory. Bathrobe, slippers, a steaming mug with HOA Queen printed in gold letters. "I knew you'd show up," she said smugly, sipping her coffee. I was wondering how long it would take. I held up the violation notices. "You want to explain this?" Karen barely glanced at them, like they were beneath her. "Oh, those?" "Yes, those are legally binding violations. You have 24 hours to comply." I laughed, actually laughed in her face. "Legally binding? Karen, we don't even have an HOA." That smug little smirk never left her face. "That's where you're wrong," she said, tilting her head like she was explaining algebra to a 5-year-old. "The HOA exists whether you like it or not." I narrowed my eyes. I've lived here for 10 years. I was at the meeting when we voted against forming an HOA. Karen took another sip of coffee. "And I was at the meeting where we reconsidered." "Oh, this was going to be fun. Who exactly voted?" I asked, already knowing the answer. She waved her hand vaguely. "That's not important. The point is—" "No, it is important," I interrupted, stepping closer. "Because from what I can tell, this so-called HOA has exactly one member. You." The fake politeness cracked just a little. Her jaw tightened. "Well," she said, voice dripping with condescension, "you can disagree all you want, but the fact remains, you are in violation and there will be consequences." I took a slow breath through my nose. Let's say, for argument's sake, that this HOA was real. What exactly am I violating? She smirked. "Excessive yard decorations." I blinked. "It's a snowman." "Yes, a temporary decoration." She nodded. "And I'm afraid it disrupts the uniform aesthetic of the neighborhood. The rules state that all holiday decorations must be tasteful and temporary." I stared at her. "It's literally made of snow. It is temporary." "That's not the point," she snapped. I grinned. "Oh, I think it is." That's when she dropped the bombshell. "You'll be fined $75 per day until it's gone." And just like that, I knew what I had to do. If Karen wanted a war, she was about to get one. I went full battle mode. Step 1. I went to the hardware store and bought a steel drum. Big, heavy, indestructible. This would be the core. Step 2. I filled it with quickset cement and water, letting it harden into a solid frozen block. Step 3. I packed ice and snow around it, sculpting it into the perfectly innocent snowman. Step 4. I sprayed the outer layer with water, creating a near-invisible ice shell. If she tried to knock it over, she'd get frostbitten hands for her trouble. But I wasn't done. I knew Karen's real move. When she really wanted something gone, she used her SUV. So just for fun, I added a few bricks at the base. Nothing visible. Just enough that if she tried ramming it, well, let's just say it wouldn't end well. The next night, I sat inside with my hot chocolate, watching the cameras. And right on schedule, 11:47 p.m., Karen arrived. This time, she had a brand new shovel. She marched onto my lawn like she was on a righteous crusade, gripping the handle like she was about to execute a public beheading. She swung. Clang. The vibration ripped through her arms. The shovel bounced off the solid core. Karen stumbled back, shaking her hands in pain. I had to bite my tongue to stop from laughing. She leaned in, inspecting the snowman. Something was wrong. She tried again. Clang. She yelped, dropped the shovel, stared at it like it had personally betrayed her. And that's when she made the call. I heard the rumble of an engine. Karen wasn't giving up. No, she was bringing in reinforcements. And by reinforcements, I mean herself, in her SUV. She positioned the car in front of the snowman, hesitated for half a second, then slammed the gas. The impact was glorious. Her front bumper crunched inward like an accordion. The hood crumpled. The headlights flickered. The unmistakable sound of a radiator exploding echoed through the street. Steam billowed from under the hood. And the snowman didn't even budge. I wish I could describe Karen's face. Shock, horror, disbelief, like she had just discovered the laws of physics personally hated her. She stumbled out of the car, staring at the wreckage in absolute horror. And that's when I stepped outside. I leaned casually against my door, sipping my hot chocolate. Something wrong. I called. Karen's face went red. You, she spluttered, pointing at the completely untouched snowman. I took another sip. It's just snow, Karen. I could see the steam coming out of her ears. Then, just when I thought the night couldn't get any better, the police arrived. The squad cars rolled up, red and blue lights flashing. Karen turned toward them, face cycling through every emotion in the Karen playbook. Shock, rage, indignation, denial. The first cop, Officer Mitchell, stepped out. He took one look at Karen, the wrecked SUV, and the perfectly intact snowman. His expression? Priceless. What the hell happened here? He muttered. And that was the beginning of Karen's downfall. Karen stood frozen, staring at the wreckage of her once pristine luxury SUV, now a steaming, crumpled disaster. Officer Mitchell rubbed his temples, his patience wearing thin. Ma'am, he sighed, are you telling me you just rammed your vehicle into a snowman? Karen whipped around to face him. Her face beet red. It was a trap. He booby-trapped it with cement. That's illegal. Mitchell turned to me. Sir, is that true? I smiled, playing it straight-faced. Officer, I just built a sturdy snowman. Karen let out an inhuman screech. He knew I'd hit it. Mitchell's expression turned stone cold. You're admitting you deliberately drove onto his private property and rammed into an inanimate object? Karen snapped her mouth shut, so fast I swear I heard her teeth click. Officer Daniels, the second cop, crossed his arms. Ma'am, you're being cited for reckless driving and destruction of property. Since you deliberately drove onto his lawn, your insurance won't cover the damages. That means the repairs are on you. Karen's face drained of color. You can't do this. I'll sue him. I'll fine him. Mitchell raised an eyebrow. Fine him? For what? For breaking HOA rules, she shrieked. Mitchell sighed. Ma'am, there is no HOA. And that was the moment it hit her. Her entire scam was unraveling. And she was screwed. By the next morning, the entire neighborhood knew. Karen had destroyed her own SUV trying to take down a snowman. But that was just the beginning of her problems. Because while she was busy licking her wounds, the city had started digging. See, Karen had spent years running her fake HOA scam. She collected dues from clueless new homeowners, issued fake violation fines, and threatened legal action against people who didn't comply. So when Officer Mitchell submitted a report about her fraudulent fines, it set off alarm bells. A government investigation was launched. And within 3 days, Karen had bigger problems than a totaled SUV. I woke up one morning to find another letter taped to my door. Mandatory community reimbursement notice. Dear homeowner, due to an unforeseen accident caused by a neighborhood safety hazard, each resident is required to pay a one-time emergency fee of $300 to compensate for damages sustained by the HOA president's vehicle. Failure to comply will result in additional fines and penalties. Signed, Karen, HOA president. I had to sit down. I was laughing too hard. Karen, the absolute lunatic, was trying to force the entire neighborhood to pay for the car she destroyed. And the best part? She actually thought people would pay. That's when I texted my neighbor, Mike. Me, you're not going to believe this. Check your mailbox. Mike, she's lost her damn mind. Let's end this. And that's exactly what we did. Instead of immediately exposing her, we let the letter spread. By afternoon, the entire street was buzzing. People were calling each other, comparing notes. Someone posted Karen's ridiculous demand in the neighborhood's Facebook group. And then we showed up. 20 neighbors marched to Karen's house, letters in hand. She opened the door, smug as ever, until she saw the crowd. Her face dropped. Mike stepped forward, holding up his letter. Karen, I just want to clarify something. She forced a smile. Of course. The payments are due by next week. Mike interrupted. Right. But I was just wondering, which legal authority are you using to collect this money? Karen blinked. Excuse me? Susan, another neighbor, stepped up. Yeah, because I called the city this morning. Turns out, asterisk, there's no record of an HOA in this neighborhood. Karen's face went bone white, and that's when the first person ripped up their letter. Then another, and another. Within seconds, the entire crowd started shredding her phony invoices and throwing them in her yard. Karen lost it. You can't do this. I am the HOA, she shrieked. Mike grinned. Then maybe you won't mind when the city's fraud department investigates your finances. That's when the government officials arrived. 2 city investigators. 1 police car. Karen backed away from the door. A mistake. This is a misunderstanding, she stammered. The lead investigator, a stone-faced woman in a navy coat, held up a fat stack of documents. Ma'am, we reviewed your records. You've been illegally collecting money under the false pretense of an HOA for years. That includes potential charges for fraud, wire fraud, and tax evasion. Karen's knees nearly buckled. I can pay it back, she blurted. I'll refund everyone. The investigator didn't even look up. That's not how this works, ma'am. And then the police officer stepped forward. You'll need to come down to the station to answer some questions. Karen spun to face me. You started this. This is your fault. I shrugged. Karen, I just wanted to build a snowman. She screamed, but nobody cared, because at that moment, Karen was finished. Within a week, Karen's house was seized. She had no money to fight the charges. The bank foreclosed on her home. And on a freezing Monday morning, the eviction team arrived. Neighbors watched as her furniture, papers, and belongings were piled onto the curb. A tow truck hauled away her wrecked SUV. By sunset, Karen was gone. And standing tall in the middle of my yard, the indestructible snowman. Karen thought power came from control. But real power? It comes from standing your ground. You don't always have to fight back. Sometimes you just have to outlast your enemies. And sometimes all it takes is a reinforced snowman.